I never imagined I'd share this, but now, at 30, I'm finally ready to speak up. I'm Erica, and this is the story of how everything changed for me when I was 13. At the time, we were a typical family, just my mom, dad, and me, living in our small home on Maple Street. Dad worked in construction, and mom was a part-time bookkeeper. We weren't wealthy, but we were content. That all shattered the day Dad had his accident. One moment, he was off to work on a regular Tuesday, and the next, he was gone. Just like that. Mom couldn't handle it. She was a shell of herself, staring at nothing for hours. I had to learn to fend for myself quickly. One evening, about 6 months after Dad died, Mom looked at me across the kitchen table, fidgeting with her coffee cup like she always did when she was nervous. "Erica, honey," she said softly, "I need to tell you something. I've met someone. His name is Robert, and he makes me happy again." I should have seen the signs, the late-night phone calls, her sudden interest in her appearance, the errands she claimed to run. But when she told me Robert and his 6-year-old daughter, Sarah, were moving in, it hit me like a punch in the gut. "But Mom," I protested, "it's only been 6 months since Dad." "I know, sweetie," she interrupted, her tone firmer than before. "But life moves on. Robert is a good man, and Sarah needs a mother figure. We can be a family again." A family. That's how she described it when Robert and Sarah moved in 2 weeks later, bringing their belongings and turning our house into something unfamiliar. Sarah was this tiny, blonde girl with pigtails and big blue eyes, the kind of child Mom had always dreamed of. "Look at her, Erica," Mom would say, watching Sarah play with her dolls. "Isn't she precious? She needs so much love and attention." And she did. But the love and attention Mom used to give me were now all directed towards Sarah. Every last bit, leaving me invisible. I really understood how things had changed one evening at dinner, just a week after they moved in. Robert's mother had come over, this woman who quickly became a constant presence in my life. She took one look at me and said, "Oh, what a big girl you are," before pinching my cheek so hard it stung. "Such a pretty face," she cooed, her fingers digging into my skin like claws. "But you know, Robert, this house would be absolutely perfect." She didn't finish, but her look said everything. I knew she thought I didn't belong. That night, I found bruises on my cheek from her pinch, but when I showed Mom, she just shook her head. Life went on, but it wasn't the same. Mom, Robert, and Sarah formed their perfect little family, always doing things together, going to the park, watching movies, having dinners filled with laughter at Sarah's jokes. Meanwhile, I was shuffled off to Mom's friend Janet's house more often. "Erica, sweetie," Mom would say, not quite meeting my eyes, "Janet needs help with little Emily today. You don't mind, do you?" So off I'd go, where at least someone seemed glad to see me. Emily, Janet's 4-year-old daughter, was adorable with her bouncy curls and a gap-toothed smile that lit up the room. She'd run to me, calling, "Airy, Airy," as soon as I walked in. Playing with Emily became the best part of my days. We'd build blanket forts, have tea parties, or read stories where I did all the silly voices. Janet would join in, asking about school, actually listening to my answers. It felt like family. Back at home though, Robert's mother, Mrs. Henderson, seemed to have moved in permanently. She was always around, rearranging furniture, criticizing decor, suggesting changes. And Mom jumped to make every change she suggested. "These walls should be eggshell, not cream," she'd say, and suddenly, Mom would be off to the store picking paint colors. "The living room furniture needs to be rearranged for better feng shui," she insisted, and Mom would spend the entire weekend moving heavy furniture around. But her favorite pastime, tormenting me. She'd grab my cheeks, squeezing until I thought my skin might split. "Still not holding your fork properly, I see," she'd scold, pinching harder. "Your mother should have taught you better." Or if I was reading on the couch, she'd sneer, "Look at her slouching like that. No wonder she has terrible posture." Pinch. "You'll never catch my Sarah sitting like that." Robert wasn't any better. If I broke a plate or spilled something, he'd explode. "Do you know how much that cost?" he'd shout, his face turning red. "Of course you don't. You've never earned $1 in your life, have you? Just a freeloader, living off my hard work." "I'm sorry," I'd mumble, trying to clean up the mess. "Sorry doesn't replace things, does it?" he'd continue. "You eat my food, wear clothes I pay for, live in my house, and what do you contribute?" Nothing but breaking things and making messes. Every time it happened, I'd look to Mom, hoping she'd say something, but she'd just busy herself cleaning or fussing with Sarah, pretending not to hear. When I turned 16, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be Robert's freeloader anymore. I spent the morning putting up flyers around the neighborhood offering dog walking services. By afternoon, I had 3 clients lined up. "You want to walk dogs?" Mrs. Peterson, one of my neighbors, asked. "What about all that schoolwork?" "I can manage both," I assured her, trying to sound confident. "I get good grades, and I'm very responsible with animals." She handed me the leash, skeptical but willing to give it a try. Soon, I was walking 5 dogs, babysitting the Martinez twins on weekends, and helping Mr. Cooper with his groceries. Janet even hired me as Emily's after-school nanny. I saved every penny I earned, never spending on candy or movies like other kids. After 3 months, I had enough for what I dreamed of, a smartphone. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. The day I brought it home, I couldn't stop smiling. It was mine, and no one could take credit for it. I was setting it up in my room when Sarah barged in. "What's that?" she demanded, pointing at my phone. "It's my new phone," I said calmly. "I bought it with my own money." "But I want a phone," she whined, running downstairs to get Robert. "Erica has a phone, and I want it," she yelled as Robert stormed up. What happened next still makes my blood boil. As I reflect on that moment, I remember how Robert, without a word, stepped over to me, snatched the phone out of my hands, and handed it straight to Sarah. "Daddy's got you covered, honey," he said to her, completely disregarding me. The anger inside me was so overwhelming, I could hardly see straight. The following day at school, I confided in Mrs. Collins, my English teacher, telling her everything about the phone, Robert's constant demeaning attitude, and my mother's indifference. She listened patiently, then took me to the principal's office. By the afternoon, my mom was called in. Though I wasn't there, I could hear the shouting from outside. When she finally came out, her face was flushed with rage, and she shoved my phone into my hands without a word. "Here," she said through gritted teeth. "Hope you're happy now." That night, after Sarah cried for hours over her lost phone, Mom stormed into my room. "How dare you?" she spat. "How dare you go behind our backs? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You're nothing but a traitor." Those were her last words to me for 2 whole weeks. Both she and Robert ignored my existence, passing me by as though I were invisible. Even at meals, they would serve food and not acknowledge my presence. 2 years went by in a similar fashion, me juggling my part-time jobs, keeping my head low at home, and focusing on my studies. Education had become my escape route. When senior year arrived, I applied for every scholarship I could find. When a letter from State College finally came, I was on the verge of vomiting from nerves. I waited until I was alone to open it, trembling so much I could barely tear the envelope. "Dear Miss Thompson, we are pleased to inform you." I read it over and over to make sure I wasn't imagining things. Full scholarship. They were offering me a full scholarship. I had done it. I was going to college and I wouldn't have to beg Robert for anything. I hoped this might finally make them proud, maybe make my mother notice me again. At dinner that night, with everyone gathered at the table, I finally spoke up. "Mom, Robert, I have some great news," I began, my heart racing. "I got into State College." "What?" Robert's fork dropped loudly onto his plate. "You applied to college without telling me? You think you can just make decisions like that while living in my house and eating my food?" "But it's a full scholarship," I pleaded. "You don't have to pay anything." "You're damn right I won't pay anything," he sneered. "Not a single cent for an ungrateful freeloader like you. Always sneaking around, always scheming." I turned to my mom, hoping for some support. She was staring at her plate, pushing her food around with her fork. "Mom," I begged, "please say something. Why aren't you standing up for me?" She finally looked up at me, her eyes cold and distant. "Why should I?" she said flatly. "You've never respected this family. You've never accepted Robert. All you've done is try to ruin my marriage. Respect?" I felt something inside me snap. All the years of hurt and frustration exploded. Respect him? He's a bully and a horrible person. There's nothing to respect. Before I could even process what happened, the slap came. One moment, I was shaking with fury. The next, my cheek burned with pain. And my mother was standing in front of me, her hands still raised. "Get out," she whispered, then louder. "Get out of my house." I touched my cheek, still in shock, and ran upstairs in a daze. I grabbed my backpack, stuffing it with whatever I could: clothes, my phone, school papers, and the little bit of cash I had saved. Everything else could be left behind. I could hear Sarah laughing downstairs, Robert yelling, but it all felt distant. 10 minutes later, I was standing at Jenny's front door. Jenny from my biology class, the only person I could think of to call. When she opened the door and saw the tears, the backpack, and the look on my face, she didn't ask anything. She just pulled me into a hug. I was sitting in Jenny's kitchen, trying to figure out how I was going to survive college without a home, when her Aunt Maria walked in. "So you're the girl Jenny's been telling me about," she said, sizing me up. "Need a job?" It turned out Maria owned a little Italian restaurant downtown and had an empty studio apartment above it. Before I even knew what was happening, she was offering me both half rent, free meals, and flexible hours around my classes. "The place needs a little work, but it's clean and safe," she said like it was no big deal. I started as a waitress, learning everything I could about the restaurant business. Maria was tough but fair, teaching me lessons I never would have gotten in my business classes. "See how that table keeps sending food back?" she'd say. "That's why we document every complaint and every compliment. The details are everything." The apartment was tiny, just enough room for a bed and a mini fridge, but it was mine. No Robert yelling at me, no Sarah barging in. Just a place I could finally call my own, where I could study, sleep, and breathe. By the time I graduated with my business degree, Maria had promoted me to administrator. I graduated on a Saturday and was back at work on Monday, managing schedules, inventory, and staff. "You've got a real knack for this," Maria told me. 2 years later, after working my way up to manager, Maria sat in her office, looking tired but content. "Jenny tells me you two have been talking about partnership," she said. I shifted nervously in my chair. "We've discussed it." "Good," she interrupted, "because I'm retiring. The restaurant's going to Jenny, but she needs someone who understands this business. Someone like you." My heart stopped. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying you two should run this place together, equal partners. You've got the experience, she's got the passion. Together, you'll make a great team." Jenny and I stayed up all night discussing it. I had saved up every penny I could over the last few years, and she had ideas to modernize the menu and expand. "We can do this," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We can really do this, Erica. Make it our own." So we did. I invested everything I had, and we turned Maria's traditional Italian restaurant into something uniquely ours. A few years later, we opened our second location across town. Sometimes, as I walked through our restaurants, watching everything run smoothly, I thought about my family. 11 years had passed since that night my mom slapped me and kicked me out. They were still in the city, I knew that much from occasional glimpses of Sarah's social media posts. But we lived in different worlds now. One day, Jenny and I were in our office above the downtown location, going over spreadsheets and expansion plans, when we heard the party arriving downstairs. "Sounds like engagement parties here," Jenny said, glancing at the schedule. 50 people. This should be a good night. We had a tradition, something we'd started when we first took over the restaurant. We'd go out and interact with the customers, get feedback, and make them feel valued. It was one of the things that set us apart from others. "I'll go check on them." I slipped into my designer blazer, pinning my name tag in place as I asked, "Did you wrap up those vendor contracts?" The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses grew louder as I made my way downstairs. An event this big could mean more repeat business, even more event bookings. I adjusted my badge and flashed my most professional smile, then I saw them. My mother was at the head table, her hair a little grayer than I remembered, but styled impeccably as always. Robert sat next to her, looking both older and yet unchanged. And Sarah, she was wearing a sparkly dress, holding hands with a man in an expensive suit. My sister's engagement party. For a moment, I considered leaving, but before I could make a move, Mom's eyes locked with mine, and I saw the moment of recognition. "Well, look who's here," she announced loudly, causing the room to turn and stare. "Our waitress for the evening." Robert's face twisted into that familiar sneer. 30 years old and still serving tables? Not that surprising. I opened my mouth to respond, but Mom cut me off. "I always knew this is where you'd end up," she said, her tone dripping with satisfaction. "Look at Sarah. College grad. Economist, engaged to a wonderful man, and you're still wearing a name tag and taking orders. Sarah giggled, squeezing her fiance's hand. Maybe she can do our dishes tonight, huh? Show us how skilled she is with the floors too. Robert, swaying slightly, probably from the alcohol, stood up. In fact, let's give her something to clean up right now, he sneered. It all happened so fast. He grabbed a plate of salad and hurled it to the floor. The crash was deafening, and I felt a sharp sting on my cheek. Reaching up, I found my fingers covered in red. Whoops, Robert smirked, watching as the blood began to trickle down my face. Better get a mop. Waitress. My blood boiled as I stood there, feeling the blood trickle. Years of hurt and anger surged within me, and I was ready to finally say everything I held back. But before I could speak, Jenny's voice cut through the tension. I think this calls for some immediate action, she said, walking up with the calm authority of someone who had learned from her Aunt Maria. She was holding our service agreement, the leather-bound document adorned with our restaurant's Golden Boss logo. Jenny cleared her throat and addressed the room. As per our service agreement, Section 3.2, any customers who verbally abuse or physically harm our staff or ownership. She paused, gesturing toward me with a pointed finger, will be escorted off the premises. Mom's mouth hung open. What do you mean? Oh, didn't you know? Jenny's smile was sharp enough to cut. You're speaking to Erica Thompson, co-owner of this establishment, and 3 more across the city. The silence was deafening. I watched as the color drained from Mom's face as she took in her surroundings, the framed reviews on the walls, the sleek decor, the sophisticated clientele, all the success she'd never bothered to understand. That's impossible, Robert stammered, but I saw doubt starting to creep into his eyes. Additionally, Jenny continued, in cases of assault, we have the right to terminate service immediately without a refund. She turned to me. Erica, it's your call. I straightened my blazer, wiped the blood off my cheek with my sleeve, and found my voice. Clear the tables, I ordered. All 50 guests need to leave now. The waitstaff moved swiftly, clearing dishes and glasses. That's when I heard the all-too-familiar screech. Mrs. Henderson, Robert's mother, clutching her plate of pasta like it was worth more than gold. You can't do this, she wailed, sounding exactly like she did when she used to lecture me about my table manners. This is my son's daughter's engagement party. Miguel, one of our waiters, tried to take her plate, but she snatched it back, sending sauce flying everywhere. Help! Help! They're attacking me. Robert, face flushed with rage, lunged toward me. Get your hands off my mother, he shouted, but our security team was quicker. 2 guards intervened, and a 3rd informed the room that the police were on their way. Sarah was crying uncontrollably. You ruined her perfect engagement party. Mom, do something. She wailed, but Mom just stood there, mascara streaked down her face, completely lost. The woman who once threw me out of her house couldn't even look me in the eye. The next 30 minutes were chaos. The police arrived, taking statements from witnesses who had captured everything on their phones. Robert was cuffed and let out, still shouting threats. An ambulance arrived to tend to my wound, and the guests slowly filed out, whispering amongst themselves. 3 days after the incident, my phone rang from an unknown number. Erica, Mom's voice was softer than I'd heard it at the restaurant, almost pleading. Please don't hang up. I waited in silence. Look about Robert, the police are pressing charges. You need to drop them. He could lose his job over this. No, I replied flatly and hung up. Within hours, social media exploded. Mom posted a long, dramatic rant portraying herself as the victim of a vindictive restaurant owner who had ruined her precious daughter's engagement party. The comments flooded in, expressing sympathy, with people vowing never to visit our restaurants. Then Sarah joined in, writing about her crazy stepsister who couldn't bear to see her little sister happy. The post spread quickly through local community groups. Jenny found me scrolling through the comments, reading the lies. You know we have it all on video, right? The security system Maria set up years ago. It automatically zooms in and records audio when it detects raised voices or aggressive movements. The footage was crystal clear. Every word could be heard. Robert's threats, Mom's insults, the crash of the plate, Mrs. Henderson screaming. I posted the video in the comments of Mom's rant with a simple message. Here's what really happened. The video went viral. Other guests from the party posted their own recordings. Someone had captured the perfect angle of Miguel trying to clear Mrs. Henderson's plate. Her face contorted in rage, pasta sauce flying everywhere. That clip alone garnered millions of views. Restaurant drama trended locally, then nationally. Food blogs picked up the story. Family crashes engagement party at daughter's own restaurant became headline news. Comment sections filled with stories of family estrangement and toxic parents. The consequences came swiftly. Robert's company, already embarrassed by his arrest, couldn't ignore the viral video of him assaulting his stepdaughter at her own business. They demoted him quietly. He was fined heavily for assault and property damage. Mom tried damage control, deleting her posts, but screenshots are forever. Sarah's wedding venue canceled on her, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. Mrs. Henderson became a meme, the pasta lady, her shrieking face plastered across social media. As I watched the view count climb on that security footage, I remembered something I used to tell myself in the dark days after Mom kicked me out. Someday things would be different. Someday, I'd have a chance to reconcile with my family. Someday they'd realize their mistakes and try to make amends. But after seeing them that night, trying to humiliate me despite all their success, I finally understood. Some things can't be fixed. Some bridges are better left burned. The video helped business, but I didn't keep it up for that reason. I kept it there as a reminder, for myself and for others, that sometimes the happy ending isn't about forgiveness or reunion. Sometimes it's about knowing when to walk away and never look back. Thanks for watching, stay stunned, and I'll see you in the next video.